IVM.
Cred has made paying your credit card bills so much easier, and by just paying your bills on the Cred app, you could win some epic rewards, prizes, cashbacks, and a whole lot more. It's just that simple, so don't miss out, just download Cred.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach. And today with us for a second time, we have Anindita Chatterjee. And if you have missed the first episode, please go listen to that because it was absolutely brilliant. We discussed about her love for travel, the way that she was managed to travel to some 60 plus countries, all while still having a full-time job. So it is absolutely insane, the little tips that she gave about how to pursue her passion. So please go listen to that. And join me in welcoming Anindita Chatterjee to the Habit Coach podcast, also known as Travel Chatter on Instagram. Anindita, welcome to the Habit Coach podcast.
Hey, Ashdin, thank you so much. It's an absolute pleasure to be back again on your show. And I thoroughly enjoyed the first one.
Yay. I'm super excited about this because this is all about travel tips. And I frankly suck at traveling. Well, I like the traveling part, but I hate the planning part and all of that goes along with it. I'm perfect to accompany somebody, but if you ask me to plan a trip, I'd much rather just stay at home. So I think this is where we are complete opposites. So I'm super excited to understand what are your tips and tricks on traveling.
Sure. So of course it took a long while. Like I said, I have been to 67 countries now. And obviously by now I think I have aced the game. And it's a lot of people feel that traveling is very expensive, and they'll ask me questions like, "How could you manage to travel to so many countries? Didn't you are you a billionaire? How much do you earn?" And a lot of questions like this. But I feel that traveling is not as expensive as people perceive it to be because it all depends on what you want to make. So a few of my top tips would be plan well in advance, and I even mentioned this in the previous episode. Extremely important. If you can plan your trips well in advance, you can book your tickets well in advance. And that is one of the most important things to save money while you're traveling because your tickets are the major chunk of your travel expenses. So once you've taken care of that, a lot of your expenses have already been taken care of. And the earlier you can book your ticket, you get a better deal. So if I have,
How much is earlier?
Could even be 6 months in advance or 3 months.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
So it's not like just 1 month or 2 months. It's actually, you could actually buy your ticket 6 months in advance, or you can plan your entire trip 6 months in advance.
Absolutely. So last year, like I was mentioning, I was supposed to go to 7 countries. Even before the lockdown began, I had already booked my tickets to Mexico in November. So that was almost 7 months later, 8 months later, actually. So it all depends. If you have your plan in place, like I mentioned, if you have a full-time job, get hold of the public holiday calendar and make your yearly holiday calendar, and you know exactly which month where you want to go. And if you know that you're going to have any issues at work and you can make this trip happen, go ahead and book the ticket. It could be 3 months in advance, 4 months in advance, doesn't matter. But usually the earlier you book, you get a better deal.
This is so interesting because as a family, we've never done this, right? Because dad will tell me, Ashton, go book our things. And I'll be like, and I just said, I hate the booking and the researching part of it. So I'll be like, yeah, maybe later. And then we end up booking it 2 weeks in advance. So I can imagine this. And I was like, you can imagine the shock when I said 6 months in advance planning it. But what would the price difference be like, a month and 6 months? How much would you actually save?
Quite a bit, actually. So I remember last year, I had gone to Hungary, to Budapest, to spend a long holy weekend for around 5 days, and just Budapest city. And I ended up paying around 30,000 from Mumbai to Budapest, when otherwise a ticket from Mumbai to Budapest costs anywhere between 55 to 60,000 if you book a last minute trip. So I almost had half the price. And
almost 50%.
Yeah, and another very important tip is when you are booking your tickets, usually the direct flights are more expensive. So if you take a direct flight to any place, it'll be far more expensive than the ones the layover. So always go with the ones with the layover if you have the time, that is. And usually the layovers are 3 or 4 hours and then you're sorted. And even if it is a long layover and you have the time, you can obviously also explore that country. So for example, one of the New Year's and Christmas, I spent it in Addis Ababa in Ethiopia. And from Ethiopia, I was going to Uganda. Now, I was supposed to fly to Uganda directly, but instead of that, I took my flight via Ethiopia. Now, nobody in Christmas will go to Addis Ababa or to Ethiopia, right? The
Correct.
flight was absolutely empty. And because I was going to Addis Ababa, and it's a very offbeat place, not too many people have visited that city. And I loved it. 2 days, of course, was very less to see the city, but whatever I did see in those 2 days, I am dying to go back to Ethiopia again. When Ethiopia wasn't even on my list of my dream destinations. But you never know what a country has in store for you unless you've gone there. So
That's crazy.
yeah, so I went via Addis Ababa, spent 2 days there, went to Uganda, and again I saved a lot on my tickets. Like I think
I've been to the airport.
Oh, okay. The airport is not so impressive, but
yeah, we had to stop over, like you just said, like a layover because we were going to Kilimanjaro for climbing the mountains. So it was via Ethiopian Airlines.
Yeah. So always make sure you make use of that layover. There was also one time I went to Cyprus, and if you fly directly to Cyprus, or if you take the shorter layover flights, they were working out to be really expensive. But I figured out that if I fly Egypt Air and I spend 2 days in Cairo, it is great. I'm getting the tickets almost 30% cheaper. So you have to work on a lot of permutation combination, figure out from your favorite websites, whichever you use for booking your tickets, and go through 2-3 websites and see what deal they all have to offer.
Do you do all those things about changing the country that you're in and seeing if you get a better deal? Have you tried any of that?
Yeah, of course. I do that all the time. So even for the return date, so at times I'm a little flexible. So I know if I can, instead of leaving on a Saturday, leave midweek. You are still taking a week off, but if you can leave midweek, then tickets are far cheaper. That's another hack. You leave on a Wednesday or a Thursday, and tickets are far cheaper than leaving on a Saturday or even coming back on a Sunday. Instead of coming back on a Sunday, at times I'll come back on a Monday, and my return tickets are far cheaper.
Interesting. And does the same thing apply for domestic travel?
Yes, absolutely. I fly to Calcutta very often because my parents live there. So Bombay, Calcutta is one of the longest and most expensive sectors usually. And a last minute fare can cost you like 9 to 10K one way. So, which is really expensive for a domestic trip. But again, if you plan it, if you go on a weekday or, if you plan it well in advance, I can get the ticket for as cheap as 5,000, which is 50% lesser.
Right.
And there's one more thing, sorry, and I should not forget this because a lot of people don't know this. I discovered this when I was in Egypt. Usually when you have a layover, and if your layover is, I think, lesser than 8 hours, okay, and you have your next flight, the airline will give you accommodation and free food.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So this is something that all of us don't know, but you should always check with your airline. So if you're not less than 8 hours, sorry, if it is more than 8 hours.
More than.
If your layover is more than 8 hours, the airline is entitled to give you a hotel and food at their expense for the layover. So great.
Nice. And you get a travel visa to go around and see the city.
So if you want to see the city, you take the visa.
Okay.
So when I went to Egypt, we were very clear that we want to see Cairo. So we had obviously around a 9-10 hours layover, and even return trip, we wanted to stay back in Egypt and see Cairo. So we had taken a visa and we could step out of the hotel as well. But usually they'll give you a hotel right next to the airport.
Fascinating. Okay, the fantastic trip.
Yeah.
Tip. What is the next tip? I think we're on this travel trip right now.
Right.
Okay, so, what is the second tip?
Okay, so after tickets, once you've taken care of your tickets, which is the biggest 5, then you have everything else you can book closer to time. So your hotels, your accommodation, what you want to do, everything can be decided closer to time. Now, depending on the next big thing is accommodation. So here are my few tips on accommodation. When you're planning a holiday, first ask yourself, what are you taking this holiday for? Is it just to relax and you just want to have a good time and eat and sleep well? Then you might want to splurge a little bit and book yourself a really nice hotel, where you want to just have a staycation. So ask yourself, is that the objective of the holiday? Then go ahead and spend that money on the hotel. But if your objective is to explore the country, which is usually the case, and you are going to be out the entire day, then I would recommend do not spend that much on your hotel because you are just going to go back to sleep. You are going to be out probably from 8 a.m. to maybe 10 p.m. And once you go back, you're going to crash. So if your hotel is only going to be to sleep, then don't spend that much. You figure out what your budget is, how much you are willing to spend, and then create a filter with that budget and look for hotels, depending on the number of days that you're going to be at that place. And other hotel for accommodation, my biggest tip is go for Airbnbs, because Airbnbs are super inexpensive and you can decide the size of the house that you want to stay at. You can decide the location. You might want to stay close to the city center. You might want to stay away from the crowds, and you can take the call. You can decide everything based on your priorities. So Airbnb is a big, like for me, I stay in Airbnbs everywhere nowadays. I hardly stay in hotels. And if you are traveling solo, and I do a lot of solo trips and I think they're amazing, then I would definitely recommend staying in hostels. Now, a lot of people have issues with hostels because they are shared spaces, etc. But even hostels have private rooms. But the good thing about hostels are it's always at the city center. It's always close to all the places that you want to see around. And you get to make a lot of friends, because hostels are mostly for solo travelers. And when you're living in a hostel, you get to know everything that you want to do. You can do what people have done. And of course, you make a lot of friends. And I've had that experience in a lot of countries. So I guess this is how you should plan out your accommodation based on what your objective is and how much money you want to shell out.
That's so interesting. I have never ever stayed in a hostel while traveling. I think I should actually do that, right? Backpack and stay in hostels.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun. And the hostels are, of course, not staying in any hostel in India yet, but abroad, the hostels are like spick and span. I mean, of course, go through the reviews, and this is not just for hostels, even for Airbnbs. Definitely read as many reviews as you can, because you have reviews on TripAdvisor, you have reviews on the website, you have Google reviews. So right now, I mean, you can find reviews everywhere. And based on the reviews, you decide where you want to stay.
Interesting. Do you have any tips on whether you should be staying next to city center or stay outside but stay next to a tube station? And do you have any thoughts on those kind of things when it comes to accommodation?
Sure. So now it depends totally on the city that you're going to. So if I'm going to a city like London, I know any place in the city center is going to be very expensive. And I do not want to spend that much on my accommodation. So then I'll probably take a place which is close to a tube station, close to the railway station, whatever. And of course, it's easy to get around. But if I'm going to an offbeat place where I know that staying in the city center will not cost me much, I'll prefer staying there. And another tip to save a lot of money is to rent a car. So especially if it's an offbeat destination. So I recently did a 15 days road trip in Costa Rica. And again, Costa Rica isn't like a city, right? I mean, it's amazing. It's one of my best countries. I mean, we had such a good time. But we usually pick up a car from the airport and drop it at the airport. So you have a car all throughout, and you're much more flexible. You can decide where you want to stop, what you want to do, when you want to eat. Everything you can decide. And even your accommodation, of course, you just have to ensure that your accommodation has free parking, and you're sorted. So, for offbeat locations where public transportation could be an issue, where you might have to wait for long hours to wait for a bus or a taxi, or Uber is not available, I think the best thing to do is rent a car. So be it Cyprus, be it Bulgaria, Romania, Ireland, Ukraine, everywhere we rent a car. So usually what I do is I will rent a car if I'm traveling outside the city. The moment I come back to the city center, so I just spent last New Year's in Ukraine. So when I came back to Kyiv, and I was in Kyiv city for New Year's at 31st, 1st and 2nd Jan, I gave up the car in the city. So from 24th to 1st, I had the car and I was in the countryside. But when I came back to the city where I know parking is an issue, you can always give up the car because you have different locations, even in the city, where you can hand over the car.
Interesting.
So renting a car is a big, big way to save a lot of money.
I think that's a fascinating one. I, again, never ever thought about this. You can really see what an amateur I am at traveling.
So, another thing with renting a car is you just find so many hidden gems because, when you have, even though, of course, I plan things really well, but obviously there are a lot of things that the internet doesn't tell you. And when you are driving and you look at Google Maps, you're like, oh, wow, there's a lake here and this looks really nice. Let's just go and stop by the lake. And it is so scenic. And when you go to the lake, it probably would be your best stop in the entire day. So there are a lot of things you can discover if you are on the road trip, which you wouldn't do if you were on the public transport. So that really helps.
Superb tip. Okay. I'm telling you, this trip is tripping me up. Huh.
Next
All right.
one.
Next one.
Yeah. Okay. Talking to a lot of locals and your Airbnb host or whoever, but talk a lot to people around you. I mean, a lot of us shy away from talking to people because we think, probably they won't appreciate it. But trust me, everyone loves it. So be it your co-passenger, the person sitting next to you on your flight, be it your Uber driver, your server at the restaurant, it could be your Airbnb host, it could be anyone. But talk to them because you have no idea how much you are going to discover about that country, all the hidden gems that only locals know. And you will not find that anywhere else, no matter how much you've researched before. So talk to them. And it's amazing. So there are a lot of places I have discovered when I was in Argentina, when I was in Peru. I didn't even know these places existed. But just talking to them, I probably had my entire day planned and I knew that, okay, this is where I have to go. Then I'm having lunch and then I'm doing this, etc. But when you talk to them, they'll tell you, don't go to this place. It's too overhyped and it's too touristy. Go to this canyon instead of this canyon. And I went to the canyon, they asked me to, and I was like, wow, I want to spend my entire day here. So these are a few of the insights that only the locals can give you. And then also tell you really inexpensive things to do. Before you go, when you do your research, on TripAdvisor, you'll read up a lot about restaurants. Okay, this restaurant is rated really good. And while, yes, you want to go to the famous places, but the locals will also tell you about offbeat places, offbeat restaurants where only locals go to eat. And it's awesome because that's when you feel that, you are really soaking in the culture of that country. You don't want to just be where all tourists are all the time. So correct. I keep telling everyone, like even for me, while I plan everything really well, but there are always few days I'll plan nothing. So I'll just keep few days free where I know that once I am in the country, I will probably figure out what I want to do once I'm there. So if I'm going for maybe 7 days, I'll plan 5 days, but 2 days, I'll just play it by ear and go with the flow.
At the start of the trip or towards the end of the trip?
Depends. Mostly towards the end, but it all depends. I mean, there are times when I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit at a coffee shop, sip some coffee and just watch the world pass me by. I just talk to some stranger who could be like a 80-year-old lady and, she doesn't understand my language, but talk to her in sign language and become great friends. So it's amazing to at times just do nothing and don't always try to take everything that's there in that country because it's not possible. Just figure out what you want to do, what you are interested in doing and stick to that because it's not possible to go ahead and see everything in 1 week or in 2 weeks. And if you're working, that's all the time that you get.
Correct.
So definitely plan your days well. That's the most important thing. Optimize the 24 hours that you have the way you want.
And also have free time, like you just said, because we're so used to saying, I have to see every single thing. Because also there's that little FOMO, right? Like we'll come back and inevitably there'll be that one friend saying that, Arey, you didn't go to that place. What a waste, yaar. Kya kiya tumne? Right? I think that is the...
Like, you have to go back again just to go here. And don't let yourself get affected because you have seen what you really wanted to see. And just be happy with that. Like it happens to me as well. When I come back, a few of my friends will be like, oh, you didn't go here, you didn't go there. I'm like, no, because I didn't want to go, I mean, I enjoyed that time when I was doing nothing and just roaming around aimlessly on the streets of so-and-so city. So it to each his own, whatever you want to keep time for.
Before going ahead, we'll take a quick break.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you're not following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. We'd like to thank the sponsors on the network this week, Cred, Cied, TheWholeTruthFoods.com, and PayPal. We really appreciate your support. So this week on Cyrus Says, Cyrus had some interesting guests. Gayo Zirani was on to talk about his new Netflix film, and Mayur Tekchandani has made a new coffee table book about the city of Mumbai, which he came to discuss on the show. On the Wire Talk, Siddharth Bhatia was joined by Dr. Ali Khan Mahmoodabad to talk about the Muslim community's issues during these thorny times. On The Habit Coach, Ashdin Doctor is joined by Sonia Jas to talk about the importance of fitness and why this is a great time to begin a journey to good health. The Simplified Gang has reunited and they discuss the hue and cry around the European Super League that was eventually just dropped after 2 days. On Shunya One, Shilith and I are talking to Gurubat from PayPal India. We talk about fintech, the future of digital payments, and a whole lot more. Really, really deep and interesting conversation about PayPal, its plans in India, and what kind of hiring they're looking to do. On the Millennial Athlete, Tanvi and Shlok were joined by sport and performance psychologist Dr. Sri Advani to talk about mental health for young sports stars. And I just want to again mention some of our cricket shows you should definitely check out, Edges and Sledges. And we also have a Hindi show called Khel Niti. Do check that out as well. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
And we are back. And I love your tip about, eating where the locals eat or going to where the locals go, because I think that is what the essence of travel is. Like we had gone to China for, I think, 3 weeks we were traveling through China to all the small places where nobody even had a hint of English. And we always ate at these family-owned little small tiny restaurants. And it was some of the best food that we've eaten ever because of it was just the locals eating there. And you would see families with kids sitting on the tables next to us. And so that's the perfect way of traveling.
Right. I know. And that makes so much sense, right? Because you want to go and mix with the locals. You want to understand what the locals do in that particular country. That's what you're going for. So spend your time doing that.
Like, and you said something so interesting that we think that everybody is going to say, stupid tourist, what do they know? Why have they come here? Go back to your country. That is like the mentality that we have sometimes when you think about it.
Right.
And we're going to Japan. And now in before going to Japan, the first thing that you do is you say Japanese etiquette, right? And you have to get that Japanese etiquette perfect. If you enter a restaurant, this is how you're supposed to behave. This is how you're supposed to use the chopsticks. This is how you're supposed to order. And all of that has been ingrained into you. So we were so conscious about going to a restaurant for the first time. And we entered the restaurant and there was dhamal. Nobody was following any of those rules. And then later on, we learned that every single Japanese, if they see a foreigner there, all the rules and etiquette have been automatically wiped out from their brain. Nobody is going to grumble at you and nothing of that sort.
Exactly. In fact, I was talking about staying in hostels, right? So even earlier, I was very reluctant to stay in hostels. I didn't know how safe they were initially when I started traveling solo. But I went to Portugal and I had so much fun there. I stayed in this amazing hostel at this city called Lagos, which is super scenic. I mean, stunning landscapes. And it was one of my best solo trips. I met so many friends, and the first day I rented a scooty all by myself, and I rode almost 265 kilometers in one day on a scooty where I was riding on the highway. I was riding along the coastline of Portugal. It was awesome. And the next day when I met these friends, we rented a car, 4 of us together, because obviously then it works out cheaper as well. We rented a car and we drove on the other side of the coastline. And it was awesome because, you experience riding solo or riding a solo scooty on Portugal, in the roads of Portugal. And you also travel with your friends in the car. So, you actually experience the best of both worlds. So it's always very good to, at times push yourself to do things that you thought you would never be able to do earlier. So coming to another big point is deciding your location based on the ticket price. So while I was talking to you about planning well in advance, there are times when you're not able to plan and suddenly you realize that, okay, I really need this break and I want to go somewhere. You can decide a location again. This time you can decide it based on the ticket price. So you go to the website. There are times I probably haven't decided where I want to go, but I know that these are the countries I want to go. So I'll do a combination of a lot of countries and figure out which gives me the best deal and book the ticket accordingly. And another very big thing is going to the country during the off season, because you don't want to really see. We are from India. We are very used to seeing really crowded places. But at times when you go on a holiday, you want some peace. You don't like really, really crowded all the time. Of course, when I travel to a city, I want life all around me. I love to see all that vibrant faces and everything all around me. But there are times when you just want to go during off season and it's amazing. So I went to Japan during off season. And of course, everything was pretty much half the price, including the tickets. I went to Georgia, Bulgaria, Romania, Budapest, all these places I went during off season. And I remember in Bulgaria, I did this trek to the 7 Rila lakes, which is absolutely gorgeous. And there was nobody. Like this lake is if you take a cable car, and then you go to you have to trek quite a bit, and then you go get to these 7 different lakes.
Mm-hmm.
Stunning is an understatement, but imagine being there with just probably 3 other people. It was so amazing. Like, it was just absolutely magical. But you can do all these things only when you travel during off season. Otherwise, I've heard these lakes are very crowded. So
I think that's a beautiful tip. If you're solo, off season is a fantastic time to travel.
Even if you're not solo, even then, even if you're traveling with your partner, sister, family, whoever, I think off season is great because you don't have to wait outside restaurants in a long queue. You don't have to wait outside the tourist attractions. And things are much, much cheaper than usual. So it's always better to go during off season. And a lot of local.
But normally season time is when the kids have their chuttis and vacation time, right? So I think that is when it becomes difficult to.
Probably you'll have to be able to do this only when you don't have kids. Of course, when you have kids, you have to go as per their holidays. But or of course, if you are traveling just with your partner, even if you have kids, there could be times you want to just travel with your husband or partner or wife, whatever. But probably even then, you can go off season because then you want to probably just stay away from so many people. So off season is a great, great time to travel.
And I love that tip that you said about choose your destination by your budget.
Right.
So maybe have 4 or 5 destinations planned and then go yay, depending on which one you get as a good ticket. That was a superb tip. I had not thought about that at all.
And also, if you're doing multiple countries, so if you have, say, 2 weeks and you want to do 1 week of one country and 1 week of another, I always tell people that make the right combination of countries. So don't choose countries which are similar to each other. So if you're going to Switzerland, don't club Austria with it just because it's right next door. No, because what you see in Switzerland will pretty much the same things in Austria. And no matter how beautiful it is, after a while, fatigue does set in, right? So if you're going to Switzerland, then probably choose another city or probably choose another country, which is a very different landscape. So always make the right combination of countries based on what you want to do. So if I'm going to a beach destination for a week and for example, I had clubbed Malta. I went to Malta and Bulgaria. 2 absolutely different places, right? Malta was beach and Bulgaria was hills and city life and a lot of adventurous stuff. But I got a very good deal. I got a very good deal on the tickets. So I combined these 2 countries. So always think about the right combination that suits you.
Lovely.
Yeah. Oh, and one more tip that I must not forget is whenever you go to a new country, take a free walking tour. Most countries, most cities offer a free walking tour. So the very first day, book that walking tour. Mostly it's free, but even if they charge, it's like a very nominal amount. Go for that tour because that's a great orientation to the city. So you'll have a group of people who will walk for 3 hours and there'll be a guide who will tell you everything about the place, what you can do, what you can't do. So it's amazing. So, and I usually do that. And I remember when I went to Prague, it was a solo trip. And obviously I know exactly what I want to do in Prague. But, I realized that there is a place close to Prague, which is called Kutna Hora, where you can actually go to a church which is totally made of skeletons. It's actually made of bones, skeletons, and I was like, okay, I had no clue that this place existed. And thanks to the guide, I got to know. And usually people go to Český Krumlov and the other places closer to Prague. And he was like, don't go there. Go here and you're going to thank me later. And wow, that was amazing. When I came back and I was telling a friend of mine who's lived in Prague for 5 years that I went to this place, which is the entire place is made of skeletons. He's like, are you serious? I have lived there for 5 years. I didn't even know about this place. So that's what these walking tours do. And because it's a group, you end up making a lot of friends. When I was in Russia, when I did the free walking tour in Moscow, I made friends for life. So we then hung out together. We watched the ballet together and we went to a lot of places after that. So these walking tours are always really, really good. So I would highly recommend taking this free walking tour. And I remember in Prague, I also did Prague is really popular for beer. But little do people know that other than drinking beer, you can also have a beer bath. So you go to a spa and you bathe in beer. So this is something I had found out even before I went. I didn't find this out from the walking tour, but amazing, right? I mean, these are the things that only research and talking to people enlightens you, So then you know that, okay, this is where you must go. So that's a big tip that definitely figure out this walking tour and do that on the very first day.
Nice. I remember beer being the perfect hair conditioner. And back in college, everyone used to talk about beer as hair conditioner.
Yeah.
Superb. In fact, we do something similar when I travel with my parents, which is we immediately when we land, the next day we plan our hop on, hop off bus tour because walking becomes an issue, especially with parents, etc. So
Yeah.
a hop on, hop off bus is a great way to just see the entire city in one shot, and then you can pick and choose where you want to go and what you want to do after that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've done the hop on hop off as well a lot of times, and mostly when I've traveled with parents. But otherwise, if you are not traveling with parents, I would definitely recommend the walking tour.
Yeah, the walking tours are such a nice way of finding the culture and seeing the world.
Yeah. And also for the nightlife, if you want to go party or you want to just go to a local restaurant, they'll tell you everything. Like they'll have answers to every question of yours. So it's really, really good.
Lovely. Any other tips for us on learning how to travel like a pro?
Yeah, I think one more tip would be not booking through travel agents in the other country. Sorry, please edit that. Another tip would be not booking through travel agents in your own country. A lot of us are very lazy and we are like, okay, we don't want to plan the trip ourselves. Let's just delegate that to a travel agent. Now, what happens here is, and you just need to be cognizant of the fact that you end up paying twice the margin because obviously the travel agent in India has his own margin. Obviously, he's making money off the trip as well. And rightly so, why not? But he's ultimately booking all this through a vendor in that particular country that you're going to. And that vendor is also charging his margin. So you are actually ending up paying double the margin that you would have paid had you directly got in touch with the vendor in that country. So in that case, if you have a tight budget, it's always better to do your own research, figure out a vendor in that country and tie up with them directly. Or do the entire planning yourself. Because I think...
And you do that in Bombay? Or in your home city? Or you do this once you land there?
No, I do it while I'm here. Because see, for me, half the fun is in the planning, right? And everything is available on the internet right now. So you, like when I was going to the Amazon forest and a lot of people, I had a friend who lives in Brazil, in Rio, and he was like, are you crazy? I haven't gone to the Amazon forest yet because I have heard it's not safe. I'm like, why not? I mean, why would you not go? So because I was traveling solo, I first ensured that I looked at all the vendors that are there in the Amazon forest who basically conduct trips to the forest. And we have these 3 nights or 4 nights trip where you go and stay with a local and, you experience the entire, you live like a local in the Amazon forest, basically. And I picked up obviously a very good vendor who was recommended by Lonely Planet. I read all the reviews and then I wrote to him directly. And they were very prompt and they wrote back to me and I dealt directly with him. But had I dealt with an Indian travel agent and he would have got me in touch with them, of course, they would have charged me a lot more money. So I'm just saying when your budget is tight and you know that you want to probably not shell out that extra money, you just book it directly with the vendor there. That makes a lot more sense.
Fascinating. Lovely. Okay, I'm going to probably start planning my trips now. So, it's so funny. I was telling my my trekking friends this. I was saying that, the best part for me traveling with, going on a trek with you guys is that I don't have to do anything. You tell me, buy this flight ticket. What flight ticket? That's it. As soon as I'm on the flight, now I'm somebody else's problem. This is the way that I used to love traveling. But I think I need to get into this research thing. It sounds like so much fun.
Yay, good. I'm inspiring you. I like that.
Yes. Excited. Anindita, thank you so much for coming and telling these tips to us. How can people connect with you and get in touch with you, to ask questions, to see the fantastic places that you've gone to?
So guys, you can get in touch with me on Instagram. I'm known as travel.chatter. I'm known as Travel Chatter on Facebook. And my website is called travelchatter.in. You'll get a lot of insights on my website as well about the places I've been to. I do have an article on a lot of travel hacks. So please do visit the website and please feel free to get in touch with me anytime you want on Instagram or anywhere else. I'm more than happy to help and do whatever it takes to help you all travel more and live a happy life. And guys, one advice for you before we sign off, I would love to tell you all that. Remember, you only live once. You only have one life. But if you live it right, once is enough. So go climb that mountain, go take that trip you had always planned to take, and live your dream. Go live your dream now. Thank you, Ashdin.
Yay! So start these habits and share with us your progress using the hashtag #TheHabitCoach. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME 180. That's Awesome 180.
Namaskar, dear friends. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. Life, as you know, is a journey. And you and I, travelers, how can we celebrate this travel? I have a podcast for you, Begin the Journey. I share stories and moments from my life. Do tune in every Monday and Thursday to listen to my podcast on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from. Cheers.
Working Monday to Friday glued to your chair making you feel dull? Worry not. Get your 5-minute weekly dose of travel around the world with postcards from nowhere. Join me every Thursday as I explore the strange, obscure, and fascinating parts of the world and bring out facets of travel you may not have thought of before. You can find us on the IVM Podcast app, website, or wherever you get your podcast from.